Okay, so just a few code of conduct reminders to start with. You've probably seen them by now, but if not, number one is there is a code of conduct that we all adhere to by participating in the Rubin Community Workshop. No harassment or unprofessional conduct will be permitted, and any violations of the code of conduct should be reported to the three points of contact. That's Sandrine Thomas, Andy Connolly, and Federica Bianco. Also, we want to all keep ourselves healthy and well as our colleagues. So if you start to feel unwell, please take the appropriate measures to not spread your illness to any other of your colleagues. If you lose an item, please see the RCW registration desk. And also please note that people have varying levels of social battery. I'm very extroverted, but not everyone is. So please be mindful of that and give people the time and space that they need. For people who are joining virtually, please stay muted when you're not speaking. And everyone who wants to speak in the room should speak into either this microphone or one of the two handheld microphones that will circulate during the Q&A. There is a Slack channel for this session if you would like to join it. It's day1-mun for Monday, -1330, and then Strong Lensing Science. And finally, for people joining on Zoom, I think the best way to engage is to raise your hand and we will call on you here in the room. I would like to adopt the following process for the Q&A sessions. First, we'll start with questions from undergraduates, graduate students, and postdocs, and then we'll take questions from more senior researchers following. If it's your first time speaking in the microphone, please say your name, your career stage, and your institution so that we can all better familiarize ourselves with each other. And then finally, for those who are presenting in today's session, please stick around at the end. We'll do a group photo with the in-person and virtual presenters. And first up, we have a presentation from Priyanka Gawudi. She's finishing up her PhD at the Inter-University Center for Astronomy and Astrophysics in Pune, India, and she will soon start her postdoc position in Italy. Today, Priyanka will be presenting a deep learning approach to model strong gravitational lenses from ground-based surveys. So Priyanka is presenting virtually. If you'll go ahead and share your slides, please.
Can you see my screen?
Yes. Can you speak one more time? It sounded a little quiet. Let's test the audio.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
What do y'all think? Good? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Give me 10 seconds to clear the stage in here.
Should I start?
Yes, you're good to start. Thanks.
Hi everyone, I am Priyanka and I'll be talking about a deep learning approach to model strong gravitational lenses from ground-based surveys. I have done this work as a part of my PhD thesis with my supervisors, Surud and Anupreeta. And I would like to thank the organizers for giving me this opportunity to present my work. Please excuse me if I'm sounding drowsy because it's 2 in the morning here in India and I don't remember the last time I used my brain at this time. So please bear with me. Yeah, so the motivation behind this work is surveys like HSC have already produced a few hundreds of images of strong lens systems, and this number is going to increase by at least a couple of order of magnitudes with surveys like LSST. And we need automated and faster ways to analyze this plethora of lenses. So in our previous work, which has been published in MNRAS now, we presented a convolutional neural network to rapidly analyze the strong lenses from HSC and predict their lens model parameters. So this work is the continuation of the previous work, where we aim to build a Bayesian neural network that will enable us to recover the lens as well as the source parameters along with their uncertainties. Analyzing images from ground-based surveys poses challenges like poor image quality compared to images obtained from space-based telescopes. So the training data for our network, we have simulated using a SimCity pipeline. So we are basically simulated galaxy strong lenses using singular isothermal ellipsoidal model. And the lens model parameters are based on real HSC galaxies, and the image properties are matched to HSC quality. Our training sample consists of 60,000 augmented images, which are generated from 20,000 unique images. And the training validation split is around 90% and 10%. So we test our network on simulated as well as real lenses. So the test sample consists of 20,000 simulated lenses. And the real sample consists of around 182 Sugohi A and B grade lenses. So these real lenses are processed using a pipeline called YATALens. So this pipeline is used to model and subtract the lens light, as well as for the real lenses, because we don't know the truth, the parameters predicted by this pipeline are, we have used them as benchmarks to compare our network's predictions with. So in the previous work, we had explored 4 different types of simulated samples. Pure sims, where we just use the simulated galaxies without any noise. Then the Gaussian noise sample contains the simulated Gaussian background noise. Then the lens light sample, we actually add the real HSC galaxies to the simulated arcs. So this is the most realistic sample, but we realize that the presence of lens light actually leads to the prediction of lens mass model parameters like the components of ellipticity, which are very close to the lens light, so which might not be true for real lenses. These two the lens model parameters and the lens light parameters can be very different. So we realize that it's better not to keep the lens light. So finally, we landed on the sample, which I have used in this work, where we have downloaded the uh, uh, empty regions from the HSC survey, where the cutouts don't have any bright objects in the central 5 arc-second regions, and then injected the simulated arcs in those cutouts. So for the rest of this talk, whatever samples I'm talking about, it's this HSCMT sample. So our neural network consists of 7 convolutional layers. Each layer consists of a convolution, batch normalization, activation, and dropout. There are average pooling layers in between, and there are last 2 dense layers, and the network predicts the lens model parameters as well as the covariance metrics. So here we are using a negative log likelihood loss function, so stochastic gradient descent optimizer with learning rate of 10⁻³ 20% dropout, batch size is 64, and we are using early stopping warning. So if the validation loss doesn't improve for consecutive 25 epochs, the training stops. And BNNs generally take longer to train than CNNs. For example, in our previous work, the network used to just take 50, the CNN just used to take 50 epochs to train. But for this Bayesian neural network, it takes around 500 to 1,000 epochs to reach that point. So in the first case, we consider 3 lens model parameters: Einstein radius and the components of ellipticity, and 3 source parameters: the unlensed position of the source and the effective radius of the source. Here the red curve shows the median, where the dashed and dotted black line show the boundaries of 1 sigma and 2 sigma regions. Here we can see that these points represent network prediction as compared with the true parameters. And here there are also we have also shown the error bars as predicted by the network. We can see that for the simulated test sample, our network can reasonably recover these parameters. And in the second case, we just consider three lens mass parameters, Einstein angle and components of the ellipticity. But here we recover the full covariance matrix. As I said, the more number of parameters will take, the BNN takes more time to train. And we don't expect the other source parameters to be correlated with this. So here we just stick to the lens model parameters. And the top panel shows similar results as I explained previously. And the lower panel shows the normalized correlation coefficients between this lens model parameters. So we also tested this model on this 182 Suguhi lenses processed by Yatta Lens. And on the y-axis, we can see the predictions from the networks and also the error bars predicted from the network compared with the predictions from the Yatta Lens and the error bars from the Yatta Lens. We can see that for Einstein radius, which is the most robust parameters to recover, we can see good agreement, but the components of ellipticity, we find discrepancies. So, and the lower panel shows this correlation coefficients as predicted by the network for this real lenses. So in this plot, I have compared the errors predicted from the networks and the correlation coefficients predicted from the networks for the real Suguhi lenses with the predictions from the Yatta lens. And we can see that we see some consistency for the error in the Einstein radius and a little bit in the components of ellipticity, but the correlation coefficients are far off from each other when these two methods are compared. So here I'm just showing one example of this real Suguhi lens, which is almost like a ring here. And this panel show the MCMC chains produced by Yatta lens. And I have plotted the 68% contour, both as predicted by the Yatta lens and the network. And I have analyzed, I have done this for all of this real lenses. And in some cases, they agree, this contours agree with each other, but in some cases, they don't. So I couldn't find any trend as such here. So to summarize the results, BNNs can serve as faster alternatives to traditional MCMC methods. And for simulated lenses, our network can recover the lens and source parameters reasonably. For real lenses, we still need reliable benchmarks to actually evaluate the performance of the network. And in the future goals, I plan to establish, like, it's important to establish the reliability of the uncertainties predicted by the network. And I also plan to apply this to LSST mock data. Thank you.
Thank you, Priyanka, for your presentation. We'll take questions. If you joined late, just a reminder, we're first going to take questions from early career researchers, so undergraduates, graduate students, and postdocs. Anybody in the room or online? What happened to the, okay, that's. Do we have any questions for more senior researchers? Please raise your hand on Zoom if you have a question. Okay, we have a question in the chat. Daniel, do you want to unmute and ask your question?
Sure, I can do that. Hi there. It was a wonderful presentation, first and foremost. But speaking as someone who is a little bit newer to this, could you give a little more background on why you're looking to these BNNs as an alternative to CNNs? Like, where are they falling short that BNNs are going to help out with? Is it just processing time?
Yeah, so in CNNs, you just get the prediction of the mean values of the parameters. You don't get the uncertainties and the covariances. While in BNNs, the Bayesian neural networks, you customize the loss function. Like in our case, I have customized the loss function such that my network estimates the mean values of the parameters and the errors and the covariances. So it's basically you can get a full posterior, basically similar to MCMC methods.
Okay, that's fantastic.
All right, thanks for the question, Daniel. Any other questions? Okay, Phil, and if you'll introduce yourself, please.
Hi there, it's Phil Marshall here. I really enjoyed that. I was wondering, have you done some tests with modeling images that do contain the lens light? I know you said that you were worried that it might introduce some bias, but I just wondered if you tried it.
Yeah, so in this case for BNNs, I have not tried, because in our previous work, when we used a CNN, we realized that when the lens light is present, the lens mass model parameters, especially the components of ellipticity that are predicted, uh, in the presence of lens light, they are predicted very close to the lens light parameters. So it kind of, adds a correlation when the lens light. So the presence of the lens light adds errors in the prediction of the lens mass model parameters. So that's why in this particular work, we did not add the lens light.
Okay, thanks, Priyanka.
Okay, I think we should move on to the next speaker, but if you have any more questions for Priyanka, please follow up with her on Slack.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Here. Yes, I do. And then slides are here. Is that good for you? Okay. Okay, our next speaker is Anaprita Moore. She's a research faculty member at IUCA as well. And today, Anaprita will be sharing about inter-university testing LSST DIA pipelines on HSC imaging to identify lens transients. Okay.
Thanks, Kate. So hi, everyone. As Kate mentioned, I'm going to talk about testing the LSST DIA pipeline. Initially, we are working on the HSC data, and then we plan to test similar things on the LSST data. Now, the plan is to work on the DP1 data. Okay, so most of the work that I'm presenting here today is actually led by Prajakta Mane, who was a master's student from IISER Mohali, working with Surud and me. And she's going to join as a grad student at Pittsburgh, working with Mike, who's here in the audience. Okay. How do I go? I guess it's not exactly a full screen. Okay. No, it's not full screen, so. I have to scroll down. Okay, so as you know, one of the main goals for studying lens transients is cosmology, and particularly with lens transients, we are thinking about lens supernovae of type 1a, which act as standard candles. in Rubin, we expect about a few hundred lens supernovae to be found over its lifetime. So one of the very relevant question is, how do we find lensed supernovae? So our plan is to inject a realistic sample of lens supernovae in data in ground-based imaging like HSE survey or Rubin-like data. And we process this data through the difference imaging analysis pipeline, identify the lensed features, and then try to come up with some simple diagnostics to identify the lensed supernovae of type 1a from the initial data itself, so that we can trigger appropriate follow-up. So we are working in this particular analysis, we are working with the HSC data release 1. And this is specifically, we are focusing on one tract from the deep, ultra deep from the Cosmos field. And we are working with 114 visits in all these bands from the HSC. And this is the pipeline that we have run on this data. The sample of lensed supernovae that we have created follows realistic properties in terms of the supernovae redshift distribution and light curves. We are working with the HSC galaxies selected, the properties of the real galaxies selected from the HSC data, which are then turned into lenses. And the lensed supernovae, the entire framework is given in the Moore 22 paper, and we inject these lens supernovae in the images, and then we run the DI pipeline to analyze the results. So this slide just shows how the images look like and our detection criteria for everything that is injected in the images. So the detection criteria is that for every injected lens system, we look at only those cases where at least two of its lensed images are visible together in at least one epoch, and the magnitude has to be brighter than 26 mag. So here we just show one example where you look at the one of the bands from the HSC, and this is the lensing galaxy. After combining this with the lensed supernova light curve, this is how this particular epoch in this particular band looks like. In total, we have generated about 2,400 lens supernovae, out of which about 2,300 are doubly lensed and about 100 are quadruply lensed. So in this slide, I'm showing various visits just for the I band, and the green and the red markers here, they point to the location of the doubly lensed supernova. And you can see for different epochs where they lie. And in the next slide, I'm showing the result from the DI pipeline. So you can see the circles, they show what was detected from the DI pipeline. And as you can see that there were, in the first few epochs, we found the green lensed image, and the subsequent epochs only shows the red lensed image, and so on. So this is how we carry this out for various, for the entire sample. And in this particular slide, we can see the corresponding light curves and the actual cadence of the LSST, which was applied to the mock to the mock lens supernovae injected in the HSC data. So with this kind of cadence, what is the detected magnitude from after running the DI pipeline for these lensed images? Overall, we find that 77% of the injected systems are detected. Yeah, I mean, they are measured and associated at least 3 epochs in at least 2 bands. And a large majority of the systems are detected as unresolved because the image separations are sufficiently small, close to 1 arcsecond or less. And then we also looked at the efficiency of detection. So basically the recovery fraction as a function of the magnitude for each of the bands. And what we can see is that the recovery fraction is pretty high for most of the magnitude range, except towards the fainter end, the recovery fraction goes down. Next, we have tried to look at some criteria which will allow us to identify these lensed supernovae, whether they are extended or not. So we have looked at shape-based extendedness parameter given by the, which we can determine on the basis of the adaptive moments of the source flux. And the orange and the blue shows the lensed versus the unlensed population. And in these plots, basically, we see that there is a marginal difference between the two population, but not substantial yet. We also looked at flux-based extendedness. So here we looked at the aperture flux, the ratio between the aperture flux and the PSF flux. And again, we can see that there is small difference between the orange and the blue population. So you can see that the lensed population tends to have some extendedness. So we looked at this using 2 different aperture sizes. And we do see some difference, but these differences are pretty small. And then lastly, we looked at the entire sample that was detected from the lensed population and the unlensed population, and then we show them in this color magnitude diagram, which shows the lensed population in the green and the unlensed in the black. And so what we have shown here is using this color magnitude diagram, for the type 1a supernovae, we can sort of consider this black curve, which will allow us to distinguish between the lensed and the unlensed population. So this is a very quick way of identifying lensed supernovae candidates just based on the basis of the color and the magnitude. So this seems to work fairly well. And I would like to end by summarizing that in most of the cases, our DIA pipeline is able to find essentially 1 image per lens system. This is fine for most cases, but there may be some some systems where the lensed images are slightly wide, they have wide separation. So we want to understand how exactly the DI is working there. And we have looked at the shape-based and the flux-based extendedness parameter. We are seeing some difference between the lens and the unlensed population, but it may not be good enough for us to identify the lensed features straight away. So we still need to understand this better or consider some other parameters which might be a better choice. And lastly, we also tried the color magnitude criteria, and that seems to work well for the lens supernovae type 1a. This is very promising, so that we can quickly narrow down a large sample of transients into a reasonable sample, which can then be triggered for appropriate follow-up observations. And in the future, we want to further investigate other flags that can be more relevant. And also, when we have these multiple lensed images, we could consider the angular variations in the shape parameters. At the moment, we're just taking the total flux, but we could consider some of the angular variations in the images and see whether that can be helpful. We are also looking at misassociations that are present in the DIA catalogs, and to understand the false positives, basically, which will again help us in coming up with ways to minimize these false positives in the real data. And lastly, we want to run our DIA pipeline on the DP1 data, since this will be a great way to understand the false positives much better. Yeah, that's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Anaprita. Do we have any questions in the room or on Zoom? Okay, and please introduce yourself.
Hi, this is Jimmy Fu from Slack. For the extendedness distribution, did you measure that on the difference image or the science image?
Yeah, on the difference images.
Okay, thank you.
There was a hand in the back.
Hi, this is Lisa. I'm an undergraduate student at University of Arizona here. And can you tell me more about what are the additional informations the lensed supernova can provide us compared with the unlensed? And what are the advantages of studying the transit events? compared with just we have the images.
Sorry, what was the last part? I didn't.
What are the advantages of studying those transit events, that is their evolution with time?
So
Thank you.
in general, what we can study with lens transients is that we can look at the time delay which is produced between the multiple images. And by measuring the time delays, we can get constraints on the cosmological parameters like the Hubble constant and so on. We can also, because we can see the same source multiple times, we can see the same supernova multiple times, we can also study the physics of the supernova itself.
Okay, we
yeah.
have another question here in the room.
Hi, Adam Bolton, Slack. So I guess a particularly key point in the progression of these things will be after the first image has been detected, and so an alert will be issued. And a second one is there, but it's like sub-threshold, so it wouldn't have been detected. So I can imagine that this could inform thinking around what sorts of filters to deploy, say, within one or more of the brokers, to say if you have, okay, a detection in the neighborhood of a galaxy, but off to the side, and then run some additional classifier or conditions to select things that are particularly likely to be lensed supernovae on the rise. I'm sure you're thinking about that. I'm just be curious to know what you think is the right, like what's going to be the most promising way of setting those sorts of things up to catch these things in real time.
Yeah, so I think you touched upon like various topics. So one of the ways we are thinking of looking for lens transients is by cross-matching the alerts with the known lens catalogs. So any alerts that happens in the vicinity of a known galaxy scale lens or a cluster, then that is something that we will be keeping track of, and we are setting up the process for making that happen, along with the appropriate coordination for the follow-up. So that is one way. But that obviously requires you to have the known lenses beforehand, and the various lens search pipelines are not necessarily complete. They are inefficient in some way or the other. And so we are also thinking of searching for lens transient using more direct methods. And this is a direct method where we will end up finding lens systems which were not known before or could not have been known before. And so we hope to find these kind of lens supernovae or transients in general from using some of the direct methods. And the other thing is that very likely the kind of systems that we'll end up finding through these direct methods are the ones which are unresolved, because they have very small image separation, which means, again, it's harder for any other lens search pipeline to have found them in the first place. So which means, so we want to then focus on finding these unresolved lens supernovae or lens transient. So the direct methods will be much more efficient in finding those if we come up with appropriate parameters.
All right. We may not have time. We might have to reserve that for the end. I'll go to the online. If there's any quick questions, please raise your hand and unmute.
I don't see any.
All right, maybe, is it a quick follow-up?
Yeah, just maybe see the conversation later. Yeah, so I guess maybe to just sharpen the question a little bit more, like how quickly can you find them? Can you find them after 1 or 2 epochs, or do you need the kind of that full progression in terms of how well you can recover these?
Are you referring to the DIA part or the color magnitude, like up to the color magnitude? Do you mean?
Potentially any of those.
Okay, sure.
All right, let's give Anuprita one last round of applause, please. Our next presenter is Anindya. So can you go ahead and share your screen, please?
Yes, sure. Am I audible? Am I audible?
Okay, 1 second. Let me do full screen. Okay, and then if you want to go into the slideshow view, that would be great.
Is it my slides are visible?
Yes, now I'll introduce you and then you can start. Okay, our next presentation is from Anindya Ganguly. Anindya is a postdoctoral fellow at IUCA. And today Anindya will be presenting Discovering Unlensed and Lensed Kilinovae in Rubin LSST, Simulations and Detection Methodology. Please take it away.
Yeah, thanks for the introduction. So I'm Anindya. I'm a postdoctoral fellow at IUCA. So this is the recent work, ongoing work, is done with collaboration with Anuprita, Shurud, and Prajakta. So I'll just quickly go into the slides and describe what I'm doing. So as you already heard about that, the strong lensing and the time delay, along with the time delay cosmography, can be very useful tool to estimate and put constraint on the cosmological parameters such as Hubble constant. And so to do time delay cosmography, we have different types of explosive transient events such as quasar, supernovae, kilonovae, and tidal disruption event. But I am mostly interested on the supernovae and the kilonovae type of these things. But today's talk, I will be more focused on the kilonovae part. So here you can see a pictorial, very simplified pictorial diagram of what I am going to say about on the next 8 minutes. So these are in the background, we have source populations. Here this can be kilonovae or supernovae. For this talk, we will be mostly talk about the kilonovae. And then in between us and the background source, there are massive galaxies which can lens these kind of sources. And finally, we will observe them in Rubin LSST. Now, why Rubin LSST? Because it is the best available telescope to observe this kind of lens sources because of its wide field of view and deep imaging. So, as you have already heard that there is a lot of study is going on in the lensed supernovae part, but the lens kilonova sector is not well explored yet. There are some studies also in the lens kilonova part, but the interesting thing is the lens kilonovae population might also have a GW counterpart. So one thing, the lens kilonova might be fainter compared to the lens supernova, but it can have a GW counterpart. So to do this, we simulate realistic populations of lens kilonovae and then use realistic populations of unlensed kilonovae. Then we put them in the lensing simulations and try to find them in the Rubin LS, following the Rubin LSST observing strategy. So in this work, even for the unlensed and the lensed kilonova, we always draw them from a realistic binary neutron star marginal rate distribution. We never consider them as a fixed number of sources. So here so in these BNS marginal rate distributions, we have a redshift dependent number of events. So this gives us a more control on the populations of the kilonova. So for this part, we are closely following Safarzadeh 2019 formalism. So this formalism have the binary evolution time and star formation rate inside their inside these distributions. Now there is also a great interest among the community to classify this type of transient sources using mainly using different type of techniques. So here we are mainly following the color evolution part of this kind of different transient. So here you can see in this, the x-axis is always evolution time and the y-axis is color in LSST G and I band. So the blue region, the blue shaded region is the type 1a supernova, the evolution of type 1a supernova, the color evolution of type 1a supernova. And the gray region is the color evolution of kilonovae, unlensed kilonovae. So you can see that the kilonovaes are much faster and they are evolving rapidly towards the radar part. So this can be a good indicator to differentiate between this type of transient when the evolution time is within 0 to 2 days or 3 days in the early phase of the evolution. Here we have also added some of the bright kilonovae. So whenever I will say bright, that means it is brighter in the LSST single exposure, brighter than the LSST single exposure limit. These are all the red thick lines. I have also added the GW1787 line. This is the dashed black line. So what we understand from this plot is color can be a good indicator to classify these different transient. So then what we did is we take all the filters of LSST and make the color diagram for type 1a supernova and the bright kilonova. So here all the colored dots you are seeing, these are the type 1a supernova, and the black colored dots are the kilonova. These are unlensed population. So here you can see that in G minus I versus R minus J, the two populations can be well distinguishable. And the big triangle, the big black triangle is the GW1787 position. And different colors is actually showing different redshift, the different redshift for the supernova candidate. Now we also create a realistic data that are following LSST observing strategy for kilonova. So what we'll actually see in the LSST data is not these beautiful kind of the complete light curve. You will only see all these red dots, all these black colored dots with error bars. So here x-axis is the time in days, and y-axis is the apparent magnitude. So after observation, you will only find these different black colored dots, and from these we have to say that it is a supernova or a kilonova. So we have to be very good in developing this kind of algorithm to say this kind of thing. Now I will quickly move to our lens part of this simulation. So for lensing part, we are using the HSC data release 3 galaxies. So these are all massive galaxies which have mass greater than 5 into 10 to the power 10 solar mass, and they are all mainly elliptic galaxy and star forming galaxy. So the star formation rate is also low for these galaxies, and we have taken galaxies up to redshift of 0.5. Because you have to we understand that even the lensing is happening for kilonova, the brightness will go up, but anyway the kilonova are fainter population, so we are not going to take very high redshift candidates. So for lensing simulations, we are closely following More and More 2022 formalism. So here we have taken 500,000 real massive galaxy from HSC, as I told. And then we have drawn all these background kilonova sources following a merger rate distributions, the proper merger rate distribution that I showed in previous slides. And then we have only taken the lens source pairs which have Einstein radius greater than 0.4 arcsecond because of the seeing limit of LSST and all these things. And then we use the boost factor to get a reasonably good samples to study them. And then we have the time delays and magnification for all of these lens source pairs. So now, as I told you, the kilonova light curve are comparatively fainter to the supernova one, but we have, after lensing, we have a advantage that there might be some candidates where the magnification, after lensing, the magnification of images might be very high. So here what we are showing is x-axis is the source redshift, the kilonova redshift, and y-axis is the magnification of each images after the lensing. So here all the blue circle are the double images, and all the orange circle are the quad images. So what we are doing is we are putting a cutoff at magnification. So we'll take only candidates where the magnification is greater than 25. And then notice that in those candidates, if it is a quad, then these two images where the magnification is high, they are also very closely separated in the time and sky position. So if these two images are within less than 0.8 arcsecond in sky and happening within 1 day, then we just add their magnification. So these becomes very highly magnified candidate. Because the reason is in LSST, when you're going to observe them, will not be able to distinguish them because of the very small sky separation and time separation. So all these red triangles, these are the candidates which I just explained, that these are the highly magnified candidates. Now I have taken one, so now you have to understand there is a trade-off between the redshift and the magnification. So we have taken a relatively nearby redshift candidates, which is marked in this black circle, and we attach a GW1787 light curve to these candidates. And then we estimate what will happen after the lensing, after we added the magnification for all of these, for this light curve. So these are different panels, are different bands of LSST, and U, G, I, R, I, G, Y, and different line style are actually showing the different images light curve. So you can see that the 2 and 3 images, as I told you, the time separation and the sky separation is very small. So they are almost superimposed with each other. And in GRIG band, you can see that when the LSST exposure limit is 120 second or 180 second, they have a peak magnitude which is higher than the limit. So this is a good thing that if we go into deep observation in LSST, we might be able to observe this kind of lens kilonova. So this is the summary and the future work for this project. So we have simulated realistic lens kilonova sample for Rubin LSST, and then we applied the LSST observing strategy to generate this kind of samples. And we are also part of the LSST desk collaboration where we supply these light curves for different types of challenges, for example, Jolteon. And the things that are remaining to do, as there is a DP1 catalog now, so we will going to replace our HSC galaxies to DP1 galaxies. Then we are going to inject these light curves in the DIA pipelines, and we also need to incorporate the microlensing effect, which is not present in the current simulations. So yeah, so I will stop here. Thank you, and I will take questions.
All right, thank you, Anindya. We have time for a couple of questions. Anybody in the room or online? All right, I'm not seeing any questions. I think we should take a 2-minute break. Introduce yourself to someone who you don't know yet here at this session or online. If you want to put in the chat who you are, tell us a little bit about yourself, and maybe tell your colleague why you chose to study or research strong lensing. When there are many things interesting in astronomy, why strong lensing? So let's take a 2-minute break and then reconvene.
Should I stop share?
Yes, that's great. Thanks. Okay, I think we should go start the next presentation so that we can end near the top of the hour. Connor, you're the next presenter if you want to go ahead and share your screen.
All right, sounds good.
Okay, and I believe this is the most up-to-date information, but please correct me if I'm wrong. Okay, Connor is a postdoctoral fellow at, the Ciela Institute, Montreal Institute for Astrophysical Data Analysis and Machine Learning in Montreal, Quebec, Canada. And today, Connor will be presenting COSTIX, a differentiable GPU accelerated gravitational lensing simulator. All right, take it away, Connor.
Thank you. Yes. I'll be talking to you today about COSTIX. It's a code that we've been working on at the Ciela Institute in the University of Montreal. The goal is to simulate gravitational lensing systems. So let's get started. I'll just start by, normally I would introduce gravitational lensing, but of course I don't need to in this group. I'll just mention that we largely focus on galaxy-galaxy gravitational lenses, but if you work on other kinds of gravitational lenses, please let me know because I am interested in expanding scope. All right. As other presenters have mentioned, gravitational lensing is a really sensitive probe for all sorts of cool cosmological effects. There's the Hubble constant, expansion rate of the universe, dark matter, of course, because lensing is sensitive to all matter. Learning about some of the early stars, early galaxies, we get magnification, that's really great. And it even lets us study black holes and all sorts of other exotic phenomena like supernovae. So gravitational lensing is a really powerful tool, but there's also lots of other people studying these things. And what we want to do is not just get a result. We want to get a precision result where we get a good answer, we get an answer that we believe, we get an answer with an uncertainty that we believe, and we can explain to everyone every step of the process along the way of accomplishing that. So that's what we've built COSTIX for. It's a gravitational lensing simulator, a fully featured gravitational lensing simulator. You can essentially do anything related to gravitational lensing within the COSTIX framework. Here in the corner, you can see we've got a fully pixelated source image. So this is a spiral galaxy. We're going to lens it with a gravitational mass map, which is itself fully pixelated representation of the projected mass at every location in this image. And then you can see we get a warped, distorted view of that source because of the gravitational lensing simulation. So you can really put together quite complex gravitational lensing simulations. This is all pixelated. You can do parametric models. You can mix and match however you like. COSTIX, one of the main features and one of the main reasons we built it to begin with is to do it entirely from scratch with PyTorch. PyTorch is a system originally built for machine learning, but it's really just a powerful numerical library, lets us access automatic differentiation and GPU acceleration. Here you can see this is a gravitational lensing simulation where what we're seeing here is not the gravitational lensing simulation, but the derivative of the brightness of every pixel with respect to every parameter in that model. So there's all sorts of really cool things that you can do when you have automatic differentiation available to you to analyze your simulations. I mentioned PyTorch gives us GPU acceleration, and that's a big deal for doing large-scale simulations. So we wanted to generate, say, a whole bunch of images kind of like this one, just with all sorts of variations of the lensing. Blue is the runtime versus the number of samples we want to generate for Lenstronomy, which is state-of-the-art, very capable gravitational lensing simulation algorithm code that's widely used. And of course, if you want to, it's a linear relationship between the number of simulations you want to run and the amount of time it takes. But on GPU, things are a little different. It doesn't become linear until you get to generating batches of 100 lenses at a time. And because of that, you can get this really big gap in performance where on the GPU, we're actually over 1,000 times faster than generating simulated lenses independently on a CPU. The orange line is caustics on the CPU. So you can see it's about the same performance as Lenstronomy when you're just running on a CPU, but it's 1,000 times faster or more on a GPU. As I mentioned, it's fully capable gravitational lensing simulator. Here this is Einstein being lensed, but with a multi-plane lens. So representing a 3D space of the universe. It's batchable, which lets us efficiently take advantage of all of our compute resources, and the autodiff. Autodiff is super important for what we wanted to do in our group, which is score-based modeling. Essentially, in score-based modeling, we take Bayes' theorem. This is just the standard Bayes' theorem. You take the derivative of both sides with respect to your parameters, and now you have an alternative formulation of Bayes' theorem that's entirely in derivatives. Caustics is differentiable, so it's really easy to access this variant of Bayes' theorem. But what's neat is we can do MCMC sampling, where instead of Metropolis Hastings, which is dependent on the local density, we can use derivatives, which gives us a much better proposal distribution in high-dimensional problems, like a problem where you want to represent every pixel in the source image as a parameter. So let's take a look at a particular lens. This is from some FLT data from the Hubble telescope. You can see it's pretty close to raw. So we've got cosmic rays in here. You can see the gravitationally lensed source that's here, and we want to recover that. So essentially what we want to do is we're going to look at a lensed image that's all warped and distorted. We want to recover what the true background thing looked like. And lots of people have attempted this for this particular object. So here's Bolton 2008, patched a bunch of sursics together. And of course, it's just a sursic model for the source. So you get all sorts of high frequency features left in the residuals. And then Eckner 2012, you get a more detailed model. Vigetti 2014, you get a more detailed model, but all of these leave residuals with features still in there, which means from like an information perspective, there's still information to be drawn from this data. And so our team at Montreal used caustics, some score-based modeling, and we were able to recover a image. It's very consistent with what all the others have seen, except now we get to see it in full detail. This is like a spiral galaxy where we can see all of its features, and the residuals that we get across the whole image are consistent with pure noise being left over. So we've fully extracted everything out of this image. And it's a Bayesian algorithm. We're doing posterior sampling, so we don't just get a single result like some of these. We get a posterior distribution of what the source could have looked like. So all of these are potentially viable images for what the source could have looked like, and we can draw as many of these as we like. So this is really cool. It opens up the possibility of doing precision cosmology for a lot of really interesting problems in astronomy. We can get incredibly detailed models that really extract all the information out of the images. We get down to noise left over for really complicated sources. And so next steps will be to start to apply this where we leave open degrees of freedom which give us information about cosmological parameters. All right, I think I'm going to leave it there because I'm low on time, but I'll mention Caustics is freely available. You can pip install Caustics. There's tutorials. There's 13 tutorials I just counted that give you access to all the features Caustics has to offer. So come talk to me if you're interested in using Caustics for doing your gravitational lensing. Thank you.
Thank you, Connor. We have time for a couple questions. Anybody have a question in the room or on Zoom? Okay.
Hi, great work. Have you, this looks like this would be a great tool for studying and quantifying substructure and galaxy scale lenses, considering how well you recover the pure noise residuals there. Is that something that you've started working on, or others in your group?
It is indeed something that we're very interested in. But the thing is, we were able to get down to this level of noise for dozens of lenses using only EPL, external shear, and a couple multipole modes. And so we're learning that it's actually really, really hard to detect substructure in a way where we actually believe it, because the signal left over is really buried deep in the noise. And so we've toyed with some sub-halo ideas, but it's actually a really, really hard problem. And so it's still haven't made progress on that yet.
Okay, we have one more question in the room.
Hi, Connor. This is Yando Antonio from Brown. I'm interested in finding out what limitations might be if you wanted to expand this to, say, cluster scale lenses where the scales are larger. Are there gotchas having to do with GPUs and the limitations of how big a sub-image you can use?
So these images are on the scale of like 64 by 64 pixels or 128 by 128 pixels. And to do this kind of pixelated modeling is really expensive. So we've mostly only gone up to that kind of scale. Now that's for specifically the score modeling. These are the results that you get here are from something called a diffusion model. But Costix itself, as a gravitational lensing simulator, it's a pure analytic gravitational lensing simulator. We add in the diffusion models and the machine learning in order to do our research with it, but it's a toolbox for anything. And you can totally use Costix with GPU acceleration for analyzing gravitational lenses, like cluster scale gravitational lenses. That's totally viable. And you would be getting that 1,000 times speed up kind of scale. So Costix is very viable for cluster lenses. The diffusion model, score model stuff that we're doing for our Galaxy stuff, that'd be very challenging.
Okay, thank you, Connor. We're gonna have to move on, but if you have any additional questions, please reach out to Connor on Slack. Vibor, you're our next speaker. Could you go ahead and share your screen?
Hi, so can you see my screen?
Yes.
So hello everyone, I'm Vibor Negi. I'm a postdoc
Oh, I'll
fellow
introduce you, sorry. But maybe you could
it's
do
fine.
full screen. We're only seeing, we're not
It's full
seeing
screen,
the slideshows in the top right. If you click that, that would make our view better, please.
Okay, wait, I will reshare.
Okay, in the meantime, I'll introduce you. Vibor Negi is a postdoctoral fellow at the Kavli Institute for Astronomy and Astrophysics in Beijing, China. And today, Vibor will be presenting generating mock simulated lens images for the Rubin LSST. This is a great view for us, so go ahead and please start. Thank you.
Hi Kate, yeah, thanks for the introduction. Yeah, so I will be talking about generating mock simulated lens images for the Rubin LSST. And this work has been done as a part of in-kind contribution for LSST when I was at IUCAA with Anuprita More, Surud More, and the LSST Strong Lensing Science Collaboration. So LSST, as we have been discussing, that LSST is going to be a revolution in model astronomy. So LSST at the end of 10 years is expected to detect around 37 billion objects, and out of them there are 20 billion galaxies and 17 billion stars. So there are several strong Epsilon lenses also expected in the LSST. So Collet et al. 2015, they have expected that there will be around 10 to the power 5 galaxy lenses in the LSST and around 10 to the power 4 strong lens quasars. So if we see this plot on the right, we can see that if we use an optimal image stacking, then we can detect around 40,000 galaxy lenses even on the 1 year of LSST data. And that number is going to increase with more time. So, but it's going to be a huge challenge to identify these 10 to the power 5 lenses among these Rubin galaxies. So currently, as we saw in Priyanka's talks also, there are several machine learning based search algorithms that are being developed to search for strong reflection lenses and also for lens modeling. But as we know that the images, they suffer from image artifacts. There are spiral arms around galaxies that may mimic strong lensing features. And hence there is a need for realistic simulated mock datasets where we can test these machine learning algorithms. So for this, we are currently using the SimCity tool. So SimCity is a tool by More et al. 2016, which can be used to generate simulated images around different types of lenses, that is galaxy scale and cluster scale. So to give a brief overview, we start with all the massive ellipticals taken as candidate lenses, and then we search for the average number of background sources behind these galaxies. And this average number of background sources that can get lensed, it depends on the source luminosity function, whether it's a quasar or a galaxy, the angular lens cross section that we estimate from the Einstein radius, assuming an singular isothermal ellipsoid, and with further depends on the source redshift, lens redshift, the velocity dispersion of the lens, and the axis ratio. So here we use the light profile of the galaxy and the standard L sigma relations from Choi et al. To generate a lens mass model for the galaxies. And for the background source properties, we draw them from the magnitude and redshift from the Foray et al. 2009 and Augury and Marshall 2010 for galaxies and quasar respectively. And to have realistic features on our galaxies, we cross-match our background sources with the real galaxy or quasar catalogs. And we cross-match them in the magnitude redshift plane and assign them real colors. And we parameterize the light profile of our galaxy with a Sarsic model, and we take a point like for sources for quasars. Then from the source property, we do the ray tracing of the sources using GravLens, Keaton et al. 2000 code. And we again use this GravLens code to generate the simulated lens images. So once we have the simulated lens images, we add Poisson noise to have real observational features and also convolve them with the PSF of the survey. Once we have this mock lensed images, the background images, we superpose them to the images of the real galaxy. So it's a kind of hybrid simulations where we are generating mock lensed images and we are overlaying them to the real observational images from real surveys. So how SimCity can be useful for LSST? So SimCity can be useful for both. It can be used for testing the several lens search pipelines as well as lens modeling pipelines. So for our LSST-like simulations, so right now we have used HSC as a test bed for LSST. The main advantage of using HSC is that HSC has comparable depths to LSST, and it has comparable seeing also, even better seeing than the LSST. And another good advantage is we have real deep images from HSC, and they are ideal for our hybrid simulations. So when we use SimCity on this HSC dataset, using SimCity, we have generated a sample of around 100K galaxy lenses from the HSC deep, ultra deep and wide fields. And we are providing this dataset to the SLDesk static lens challenge. So the main aim of this challenge is to test several lens search and modeling algorithms in the 1 year of LSST data. So there are going to be two datasets. One is the pure LSST mocks and another is the HSC lenses degraded to LSST-like quality, and it is being done by other members of the group, and they account for the 0 point of the survey, the PSF, pixel scale, and the background noise while degrading. And since it's going to be on the 1 year of LSST data, so we apply the detection threshold on the lenses, the sources, and also on the magnitude of the second brightest image, such that we see at least 2 images. So for the 100K sample of our Galaxy LC lenses that we have generated, we are providing 50K of them as training and 50K of them as test. So if we compare the lens galaxy properties of our simulated sample with the full foreground galaxy population so this is for the Cosmos field only, we can see that our lenses are slightly brighter than the full galaxy foreground populations, and this can be just because like the more massive, more luminous galaxies are more prone to be lenses. On the redshift space, we can see that the our sample peaks at intermediate redshifts, and they have slightly higher ellipticity as compared to the full galaxy population. For the position angle, we don't see any orientation bias. So it says that our lenses they have uniformity there, and they have similar stellar mass as compared to the full foreground galaxy populations. For the velocity dispersion, we can see that our lenses have slightly higher velocity dispersion to the foreground galaxy population, and this is obvious, like the lensing probability is sensitive to the velocity dispersion of the galaxy. And if we see the property of the lens sources that we have got, the lens galaxies from the cosmos field, most of our lens galaxies are at the fainter end, that is fainter than 25 and 25.5 even. And in the redshift, they peak at around redshift 2 to 2.5, and this is where most of the star-forming galaxies are found. In the ellipticity and position angle, so again, we don't see any orientation bias. And if we see the half-light radius of the lensed galaxies, so we again see that they are quite realistic. And since we have put a cut to choose only blue galaxies for the lens galaxies, so we can see it on the color magnitude diagram also. So here are some of the cutouts that we have generated. So we can see that here we can see a variety of lensing configurations, that we can see arcs, Einstein rings, multiple images, and we can also see the variations in the brightness, the separation, and also the orientation. So it shows that our lens system, they are very realistic and they are good enough to be used for testing these machine learning algorithms. So just to summarize, so we have injected simulated images around potential lenses from the deep and wide fields. So we have generated 100 case lenses for the SL Statics challenge, and the mini challenge data for this is already out. The training data will be out soon. And if you work on these things, we encourage you to test your pipelines on this data. So currently I'm simulating a sample of lensed quasar also using the same approach, and this work is in progress. And I've also aimed to work on training a CNN on this simulated data that can be used to search for strong lens systems in the real LSST data. So that's all from my side. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we'll take one or two questions. And then Shenming, you're next, so maybe we can go ahead. Okay, Timo, I see you have your hand raised on Zoom. Please unmute and ask your question.
Hi, Kate. It's not me, but someone in the room, so I let him.
Hi, Kate. I got a question about the PSF. I don't know how was modeling the PSF, and if you got in count redshift or position in the sky to model the PSF of these lens systems.
Sorry, can you repeat?
Can you hear me well?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, I can approach as well to the microphone. Okay, my question is how you model the PSF of this lens system if you have in count the position of the source and the lens in the sky, or you use the same PSF for all the systems? That's my question.
Yes, so right now we have used the average PSF of the HSC. So for different fields, we use the average PSF, and for that particular field, we use the same PSF. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
All right, one more question. Anybody? Otherwise, we'll move on. If you could stop screen sharing, that would be helpful, please. Thank you. Let's give another round of applause to Vibor.
Okay, thank you.
Is that good for you? Okay. Okay, our next presenter is Shenming Fu. Shenming is a research associate at SLAC in California, and today Shenming will be sharing with us initial catalog query for LSST Lens AGN.
Good afternoon, everyone. First, I want to thank the organizer for giving me this opportunity to share our project. So I was like big thank you to my summer student, Daniel and Drew. They contribute a lot to this project, and also the group leader, Phil, and group members, Sydney and Padma, and many other people. Yeah, so let me just first the outline. So first introduction, why do we need a lens agent, how to find them, and what do lens agent look like in the data? So then I would talk about source injection, then our initial test on DP0, then the recent test on DP1, and the purity and imposters, and then finally the summary for this ongoing work. So I start from the theory. I think a lot of previous presenters have already talked about this. So time delay between strong lensing images is a cosmological probe, because the time delay, you can divide that into a distance term, and then this angle term, and the potential term. And then the potential term can be derived from the lens mass distribution, and then you will know the original position of the source and the observers of the source. And then the most useful part is from the distance term, because it's the angular diameter distance ratio, which is related to the cosmological parameters. So that's the cosmological probe we can use. But for for Rubin, we'll observe thousands of strongly lensed agents from OM10, and we want a list of lensed agents from the year one data, and we want they're bright and they have sufficient time variance. And the reason is we just want to follow them up as soon as possible. Then we just have question like, how do they look like in the data, and how to find them in the alerts and the PPDB. And then if we find them, then how complete and how pure they are. Those are the main questions we want to investigate. Then how to find lens agent? I'm thinking about there are a couple of ways. Maybe look at a stack image. So we can look for example, Einstein ring. That's rare, and it can be fainter than the quasars. We can look for group of agents, for example, by color, because agents are usually bluer than the other stars, but they are not necessarily strongly lensed. But if we look at time domain, we can just look at difference images, use the time variance, and it's more direct method. So from this Kochanek 2006, in the paper, the author said we can just look for the spatially extended variable sources. But the problem is it could be imposters, like things look at lens agent, could be group of variable stars or agent. So it's possible we can use colors to on the difference on the direct image to remove some imposters. But in the real observation, the data can be more complicated. And we need to use some way to figure out whether like blending or bogus or dipole would affect our detection or not. So the solution for this is source injection. And the reason why source injection is used for are, so it's realistic for the sources, and then we can easy to control the input, and we can make a direct comparison between the input and output. So we can start from making the postage stamps of strong lensing agent system using a software called SLSIM. So on the left, on the right is showing a example of the stamp. So we are using the ST pixel scale, no noise, no PSF. So I need to give credit to Padma, she made those stamps. And in the system, we have lens galaxy, we have lens the source galaxy, which is an arc, and then Asian. There are two images caused by the strong lensing, and they're varying the brightness with time. Then we will run source injection into the LST images and reprocessing data. And also you can check the RSP tutorials on synthetic source injection by Jeff and Lee. Those are very useful. So the initial test is on DP0, the image simulations. So here I'm showing you example, inject stamps into a grid. So for the single exposure, we consider a single exposure stamp. And for the template, it's a co-add, so we need a main stamp. then we can run the image extraction using the default Euler-Lupton algorithm in the LSP pipeline. So we process all those data on LSP, and then we are using the latest LSP science pipeline version 29.1.1. That's actually the version for DP1. So those images here are generated by that version. And we use the source injection package in the LSP pipeline, and also the image subtraction and the detection measurement, all those tasks in the LSP pipeline. Oh yeah, so the stamps are set to be bright. This is for demonstration. So then let's look at the difference image. If we just directly look at difference image, it's hard to see the detail. But if we zoom in, we could see for this example, there are two strong lens images. And then because of time delay, so one could be brighter than the other. So after image extraction, we could see the dipole feature. And just because the environment and the noise are different at different locations, so the dipole features will also look slightly different. And then if you detect sources on this difference image to generate DIA sources, we will see things on the grid, but we will also see things are not on the grid. So those are the things we didn't inject, but they exist in the catalog. Those are bogus. So then we could try to figure out the statistic of DIA sources, like match the things we injected with what we detected. So one thing we notice is for the bogus, they usually have larger position uncertainties than the matched one, that the real things we injected. But also we notice for strong lensing multiple images, they can be detected by as one DIA source, but sometimes more DIA sources. And also something worries us is that the figure at the bottom right, those are different measurement for the position for the DIA source, and you can see they're jumping around. So I think that's mainly because the multiple images of strong lensing can cause some difficulty in the measurement. And our plan is to figure out the list of useful features and then send that to random forest for supervised learning and classification. Now I want to switch the topic to DP1. So now we have real images from SST, and we want to check the year one like detections. So Dhruv made those simulations. One thing we need to pay attention to is each exposure, the camera is rotating. So when we inject the stamps, you also need to rotate the stamps based on the broadside angle. So now in this exposure, we have three exposures with the blue rectangle as the coad. So you can see if you want to do source injection, we can only do a small fraction of the coad, or maybe the template, because if you want to find the overlap is just a small region. Another topic we've been investigating is the imposters, like how pure our selection could be. So Daniel made this study for imposters. Again, those are things look like lens agents. One thing we first do is to say how many agents could be there in the data. So we look at SDS, Gaia, and DESI, try to find a number density of agent. So because those surveys are not so deep, we need to extrapolate that to the depths, for example, 23.5, a bit shallower than the one exposure. So we have a number between like 50K to 30K per square degree. And then if you have that number, we can run Monte Carlo to say how many close pairs of agent would exist, because those close pairs will look like lens agents. And finally, we can make this plot at the bottom right for the simulated agent pairs. Their properties, for example, two agent, how bright difference they look like, how color different they will look like. And they are sort of correlated with each other. So we need to consider all of those features in the selection. Okay, so let me give a summary. It's an ongoing desk project, and the goal is to derive a first cut to find lens agent in the year one PPDB or alerts. And we have a GitHub repo for this project. If you're interested, you can try that code. And then we did tests first on DP0 and DP1, and then we studied some statistics for the imposters. For the cuts, so we want to start from the features derived from the different images and then put them into the random forest for classification. There could be the properties of individual DIA sources, but it also could be the collections of DIA sources. Just as I showed before, the multiple images can be detected as one or multiple DIA sources. And the color from the science image, the direct image, could be useful because the agents, they have special colors. And potentially the light curves will be useful to remove imposters because we know how the variable star will look like for their light curves. And then we can use the clustering of DI sources on a difference image to look for the multiple images of strong lensing. So for example, divide the sky into big grids of superpixels and count the number of detections in those superpixels. Because associating DI sources as objects might not work so well. So that's related to the last topic I want to talk about is DI objects. DI objects trying to associate the DI sources from different exposures using some matching tolerance. But the problem is if the multiple images that as sources and those sources are jumping around, we don't know how good the DI objects will be useful to describe this, the system. So there could be missing or stranded strong lensing images, and could be missing lenses. And we don't know how that will affect our cuts on the imposters. So those are the things we are studying right now. Yeah, so that's it. Thank you. Let me know if you have any questions.
All right, thank you. We can take 1 or 2 questions. We have one more talk, so please stick around. If you want to go up, we can transition. Any questions for Shenming in the room or online? Okay.
Shenming, on the question of DIA objects, do you expect the lenses themselves to be variable? And wouldn't that create a potential mess?
Yeah, in the simulation, we just assume the lens galaxies, they're just fix their brightness. But I think if the PSFs are different, if the PSF difference is big enough, that would cause some problem in the different images. But I guess it's kind of secondary effect. We don't have to worry about that now. Yeah, thank you for the question.
All righty. Any questions online? Going once, going twice. All right. Shenming is here in person, so of course, if you're here also in person, please follow up if you have any more additional questions.
Okay. Thank you.
Let's give Shenming one more round of applause, please. We have one final presentation. Okay, our final speaker for today is Alma Gonzalez. Alma is a professor at the Universidad de Guanajuato in Mexico. And today Alma will present image quality for strong lensing studies in DP1.
Thank you. And this is going to be a very short presentation. And I want to thank Kate and the organizers for the last minute request to be allocated. And a disclaimer that this was basically an excuse for me to look into the DP1 data and try to start working with it. So the motivation is that Rubin will provide us data products, deep coats, that means all images gathered for some region. And for example, for DP1, all images taken within a PSF of less than 1.7 arcsecond went into that deep coat provided. And it will also provide best seeing coats. I think they are not yet for DP1, but I'm not quite sure. And I think there is another one, there is a third kind of coats that will be provided. But none of those products was actually with having in mind the strong lensing size case as baseline. So in this work, what I'm trying to do is try to compare different visit selections to create custom quad images, aiming to identify, or at least try to identify, if there is an optimal of image position for, especially for early detections where we will have a small number of visits. For example, we could consider this optimal based on the magnitude of the objects or the system that we are trying to detect. So some background is that we did some of these studies in DP0, and basically we were trying to understand the PSF variation across different visits and how when those go into the quad, you get a different distribution of the PSF size, the ellipticity, and different quantities that you can use to kind of measure this quality of the image. And so this is some example. This was DP0, just to see that while in a visit, you can have very narrow distributions. Once you get a quad, then your PSF distribution is broadened. And so it will depend where your lens system falls in the image, what you will be getting. And so this here, for example, this is also DP0, where we were looking at some of the visits that cover one specific region, and you can see that you have a full distribution of PSF size. This is just an example of one of the quantities. So you can have a broadened distribution of all of this, and even when you have some average PSFs of the same size, when you look at the variation across the visit, it could be very different. So when you go add all of them, the result is going to be that your PSF is going to be it could be all over the place. And so, this is motivating then that maybe if we look at some of the best combinations of different properties of the images, maybe we can get some optimal stacking of the image for highlighting the strong lensing systems. And so we came up with this kind of summary diagnostic plots where we see for a given visit, the PSF size, average value, the size of the dot is the dispersion of the PSF size. And we can also see by color for other quantities like air mass or some other things that we can think of. How can I, okay, that's what I wanted. Yeah, so back with DP0, we made some progress understanding these image quality variations and how they enter into the stack, but we didn't actually get to see the impact for strong lensing searchers, basically because there was no strong lensing. And so even though we could work with injecting simulated systems and so on, we went into some complications, so we didn't make a lot of progress on that. But now we can do it on DP1 because there are some regions where we can try to find some lenses. And so here, this is a very preliminary work. It's just an example. So I'm looking at the Euclid Deep Field South in DP1. Those are the center coordinates. And I'm cross-matching with the Euclid's Quick Discovery Engine Lens catalog. And I'm looking at the grade A examples, especially for this talk. So this is one of the examples. You can see a very nice and clear arc lens, and we will see later on how it's looking in DP1. But before going to there, so this is the same kind of images that I showed before, but now for this object. This is the G band, and you can see that the observations for this object have two different distributions, but all of those went into the quad that is available. So what I'm going to show is what happens if we select only those ones that have the best PSF, but also have a low air mass value and also have a small variation in the PSF in the visit. We did the same for all the bands. For now is GR and I band, and you can see that these kind of variations, it actually differs from filter to filter, and that's natural because that's how we are observing. So in this case, there is not clear separation of this population, so it is not clear that we could actually select something better than other things, but it's clear in some cases that we have visits with a large variation on the PSF across the image, so we don't want to use, or at least I think we could remove those from the sample. It seems that the Zoom disconnected, it's okay. Shall I continue? Okay, I'm going to then no. Should I close this?
So we are not seeing the presentation. We're still all connected to the Zoom, but there is no presentation seen. There's no sharing, screen sharing.
Are we on the Zoom anymore? Now it doesn't look like we're on the Zoom anymore. Why do they have here? I don't know where that. Maybe I should continue and then I post this stuff. Sorry about that. Okay.
Okay, so, and this is actually the opposite example where what I was trying to make what happen if we do select the other visits with this large variation and so on. But for the example that I'm going to show, I basically selected just these limits, and for this example is arbitrary limits. The idea is to make this a more quantitative selection. And so here is the result. There is no quantitative comparison yet with some metrics of how well we could recover the system. But on the left, you see the original deep coad image provided by the pipeline, and in the other side, you see the custom coaddition that I made, making these filters. Even though you don't see very large differences with respect to the lens itself, I think this means that even with the small visits, but well selected, we could see the strong lens with more or less the same confidence that stacking everything without looking at that. This exercise was done using the tutorials on DP1, and this example, a DP pretty picture task done by somebody else at the Slack that they post them in the Strong Lensing Pipeline. So I highly encourage people to look at the Strong Lensing Pipeline channel because a lot of things are being done there. And yes, in future work, I want to do some quantitative tests of these results in this and all of the other systems that are present in the Euclid region that is seen by Rubin, as well as with simulation, because as we have seen in previous talks, that is where we can have the full control and can measure things. And one thing that we are working on is on some fast cutout coaddition to explore several of these combinations that we could do, because this task of making the custom coaddition is very time consuming and uses a large fraction of disk space, so we cannot do that for all the combinations we would like to try, but I think we can do some fast cutout coaddition to get at least some ballpark of the parameters. And yeah, the idea is try to identify some optimal cutouts and see how it helps or whether it is feasible to work with the minimal number of visits, but that we can still have object detection, blending, and all other tasks. Thank you very much.
All right, we'll take one question if there's one in the room, and then I think we have to transition to the next session since we're. Okay.
Hi, I'm Kshitija. So a quick question. In the previous plots, the size of the PSF, that was the average PSF across the entire focal plane?
It was less than 1.7 degree in the original deep coas. Yes, and in the custom one that I did, I haven't measured it yet, but I
No.
expect to be smaller.
No, in the plot of the PSF, yeah, PSF versus the time.
This was pixel size, yeah.
Okay, pixel size, but this is across the entire focal plane, right?
Across what, sorry?
Across the entire focal plane?
Across the visit.
Across the visit, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks. Let's give Alma and all of our speakers one more round of applause. Thanks everyone for attending. Thanks for your patience and staying overtime. And take care.